Good afternoon, everybody. On today's Business Applications Lunch and Learn, we're going to be diving into Microsoft's Power BI. If you're not familiar with Microsoft's Business Applications Lunch and Learn series, hit the subscribe button down below and take a look at the description. In the description, you'll have the timestamps of all of the demo elements that you can fast forward through and jump to the point that's just relevant for you. By subscribing, you'll receive a notification every Monday when we deliver new videos and demonstrations showcasing the value of Microsoft's business applications ecosystem. Today, we're going to be covering Power BI, but it includes Azure and AI and Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. Microsoft's leadership position in the business and analytics space has been garnered by Gartner #1 for the past 11 years. It is amazing. And on today's showcase, we're going to be diving into why and take a look at the end of our episode where we deliver the details of here's what you get with Microsoft's Power BI and the editor that's integrated with Microsoft's Dynamics 365 and the rest of the business applications ecosystem. It really is amazing, and it's Microsoft's ability to empower our customers to tell that analytics story. There is nobody better than telling that story than Scott Sewell. Scott's on the team call today. How are you, Scott?
Doing good, Nick. It's good to be here.
Hey, we appreciate it. I saw your demonstration of Titanic, and it really got me excited, and I wanted to bring it to our community. So thank you for making the time. I know it's a busy time of the year, so thank you.
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun to get to share. And as you know, I can get excited and talk forever about the value of how you bring these two tools together, or I say two tools, the whole platform together as a way of solving problems for customers. And each one in and of itself has its own strengths, and it has its own things it brings to the table. But the two of them together is kind of this wonder twin thing that activates this really explosive ability to solve problems. And I really don't like to show one without the other a lot of times, because the two together are they accelerate each other. I knew that I wanted to learn Power BI, and I needed a data set or something to learn from. And I don't know who it was that came up with the idea of using the data coming off of Wikipedia for the Titanic originally. It wasn't my idea originally, but I started using that, and just exploring the historical reality of the Titanic and the people who were on board the Titanic, and understanding more about what that process is and what we can learn from it.
So yeah, it's key, right? So taking an event in history and looking at the data and being able to understand here's what happened, but also here is where, from a business context, how you might be able to apply it to your organization. And the amount of data that Microsoft's customers are bringing into the organization, it's only as good as whether or not you can convert it into actionable insights. And your storytelling with the Titanic data, I don't think there's any better example. So it's
a lot of fun, and I want to be super respectful of the sometimes I make a joke, and I'm really joking about the movie Titanic, not the actual historical event, but it is an interesting historical data set that we get to explore and learn something about what this unique collection of people were in history. How about I show you the Titanic environment that I started with, and I can walk you through how the two talk to each other, and some of the things I've learned about the process and learned about the lives of the people that were on the board this boat in the process. This is Dynamics 365, and I've brought in the passengers and crew from the original boat. Just grab the data off of Wikipedia, and I have data about who they are. There's information about like their name, the passenger type they were a part of, the embarkation port, meaning what city did they get on the boat from. I didn't realize they actually stopped at 3 places before they left from Southampton to come to New York. But there's also the age and gender, as well as the ticket numbers, and an outcome, as well as a title that they had. And a lot of this data is historical data. There's people who are really fascinated with pulling all this information together. In fact, even within a contact, we can look at a contact itself and see the pictures of them, who they are, as well as this information. The passenger type is interesting. If you think about the movie, Jack, who's at Leonardo DiCaprio, and Rose, Kate Winslet, right? And that they had the different passengers and first class passengers, and then there's third class passengers, and you also have the people who were manning the boat, the officers, and people who worked in the kitchens and everything. All these people were on the boat, and each one had some aspect of what type of passenger they were, or what their age or their gender. All these things came together sort of and we can explore that information to understand what of those factors influenced whether they survived or tragically perished in the disaster. So again, I have to don't want to take credit for, I wasn't the one who came up with this idea of using that data set for some predictive work, but I thought it works really well within Dynamics plus Power BI. So I brought these two together, and let me show you an example of what, we have dashboards in Dynamics. And if I looked at a standard dashboard, I've got information about passenger groups and types. That's very, very standard information. But what I wanted to do is be able to tell the story of what's going on inside of Titanic or inside of this data set through a richer visual language, mostly because the people that I work with in terms of customers, there's really, even though I can look at a list of passengers, crew, and I don't know about you, but if I just look at a list of contacts or a list of opportunities or a list of cases, there's some visual information there for me. That's helpful to a degree. But if I really wanted to explore it in a new way, I need to see it visually. I want to see it pictures. They tell a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So in this case, I brought it in and said, let's visualize it in a way. And like I said, this was really the first time I ever used Power BI. So now we're looking at the data that's coming out of Dynamics, and we're exploring it in a dashboard that's in Power BI, but that's surfaced inside of Dynamics, that gives us this visual understanding of what's happening. It helps us see the data, explore it in a way that just lists of records in a view doesn't quite communicate as effectively, especially for the business decision makers, the managers who are trying to look at bigger data sets across their team or across their organization. This is a way in which we can explore the information much more effectively. Like, for instance, in this case, this visual here is called a ribbon chart, and it lets me look at things like the groups and the people who are the children, the 0 to 12-year-olds, and we see in that was the only group in which more of that particular group, the 0 to 12-year-olds, more of them survived than perished. In fact, and then if you move up a group to just the teenagers, you can see that there's a difference in terms of the people who survive the outcome. If I filter on that, I can see the rest of the dashboard filter to just that particular group. And in this case, I can see that only 30% of the teenagers on board survived. Then I move up to the 20-year-olds, and you can look, and the rest of the dashboard starts reformatting itself to understand what are we understanding about this particular group. So that's a little bit of the strength there. We can then look at other things like just interesting visualizations, like this is a souls aboard by group, by crew, passengers, and then we have this little group called passenger staff, and those are the people who they didn't work for the boat. They worked for the passengers on the boat, like they were the think about it like children's nannies or butlers, things like that. From the we're talking about from the 1800s here or early 1900s, and these people are working for the passengers on board, and they're part of that group. But they actually have it's an interesting story around who they are, because as we'll see here in a second, we look at the different groups. If I just roll this up and drill up here, I can look at passenger staff, passengers, and crew. And the survival rate for those three groups is very different. Like, for instance, the crew survives at this low 23% rate, but the passenger staff actually survive at the highest rate, which is 67%. Very interesting difference between those two, and maybe that leads us to asking questions about why is there a difference between those two groups? What's making a difference? And that lets us know more about the data that's sitting inside of Dynamics. Again, it's all about drilling in and saying, oh, I see something visual, but what is that telling me about what's going on inside of Dynamics? What's going on about my customer base? So let's drill in for a second real quickly, and we can see if I break this out and say first class staff, in fact, even within all the groups, there's one group called first class staff, and those are, again, are the people who worked for, who are personally employed by the first class staff, the first class passengers. If I click on that and just isolate it to just the first class staff, I can see there's a 74% survival rate for that one particular group. 74%, we can see the first class staff, most of them survived. And if I even, see, I think I can drill in here, drill down to one more layer down and look at just the within that group, there are females and males within that. And the interesting thing is, if I get to the first class passenger group, you can find that of that group, if you were a first class passenger staff member and you were female, let me open up the filter pane on the right, and we can see the gender groups, chivalry order. I'll open that up and say, let me filter that to just one particular group. And the females within that group, 100% of the ladies who were on the boat who were first class staff members survived. Well, again, that prompts for a question and say, why is that? And you think that's probably, I'm just guessing, but it's because they are the people who are carrying the children, like the nannies of the first class passengers, and therefore they wind up in the boat first. So again, it's something I don't see when I'm just looking at a broad picture of all the data in Dynamics, and I might see some graphs, but trying to drill in and understand what's going on there. But I also see down in the groups, again, if I bring this up, the crew has this really low survivability rate, 23%. But if I open that up and explore that, I can find out that sure enough, there's this one group, the deck crew members, 67% of them survive. Very high percent, even higher than the first class passengers. But then you start asking questions, you realize, well, of course, but they're the ones who have to row the lifeboats, right? So it's an interesting process of getting that. And if I drill into it, maybe I want to explore that particular group a little bit more, I can right click and drill through to another report that's just the passenger types. And once I'm on this passenger type record, passenger type report, I can see who are the deck crew members. It was 19 perished, 39 were rescued. 100% of the deck crew members were male, and they came from these two areas. One came from Belfast, 17 of them came from Belfast, and another group came from Southampton. And again, it's just an interesting way of exploring that. But once I even get that far into the data, if you'll notice below, because these two systems are so easily integrated with each other, I've got a list of the manifest of these contacts coming out of Dynamics, being filtered into Power BI. And let's say that I filter it to just the 19 that perished, or just the 39 who were rescued. Actually, let's look at the ones who were rescued that came from Belfast. I'll filter to just that group. Now we're looking at just Belfast passengers. So as I've brought this in, I've got the manifest, I've got the contacts, and they've even got hyperlinks that could take me to the contact record associated with it. So it's that 360-degree round trip. The data is coming from Dynamics. I'm visualizing it in this graphical interface that's allowing me to bring data together, and then I can then go take action on very specific records. And I've done this a lot of times with customer examples where in those examples, I was saying, like, let's look at a list of opportunities, and then we'll drill into that list and filter it maybe by a representative or a territory, an industry or something. And then down right here on the bottom, I've got a list of those opportunities, and I can click from Power BI and go back to Dynamics to see more detail about what's going on. Again, it's a whole process of being able to visualize this information and explore it. Let me show you a slightly different approach to this. And I'm going to take it in from a generic customer that's based loosely on a customer I'm working with right now, but how I take this and use it in a sales context. Fair enough?
Yeah, Scott, that's great. I think the storytelling of taking your data from a rich event, or maybe it's a seasonal launch of a product, or if it's data coming into your customer center, right? The Titanic is just one good example, but the ability to bring it to your organization and have a capabilities of here's what's happening for our customer experiences and how do we drive the outcomes based upon data. It's powerful. And Microsoft's Power BI and the business applications platform, of which Dynamics 365 is at their core, it shines and it brings that analytics, that automation, and that activity into one single pane of glass.
That's exactly right. I couldn't have said it better myself, Nick. This case, I was talking with a customer and I wanted to explore how that and show them how that they can get their arms around all the cases coming through their through Dynamics 365, either the cases or their sales opportunities, and how this combination of tools is incredibly powerful, allowing them to understand the stories of what's going on inside of their environment. In this case, I took a customer who was looking at opportunities, and within Dynamics, I can see list of opportunities that are out there. These are all generic customers, generic data. So showing a Rosario Sports, and here's an open opportunity for this product, and here's my contact that's there. Here's the stage I'm in of the pipeline. Here's the number. Very similar stuff we've seen all along. But then I said, let's bring that out and let's explore the information, maybe in an opportunity dashboard. So here's the opportunity dashboard that shows me at very high level views. Here's my KPIs, like actual revenue won, how much of the pipeline is committed already, as well as bringing it down by the salesperson who's involved. I can also look at things like, revenue won by the tier of the customer, or month over month product growth or reduction. Where's our growth coming from in a month over month view? So, but then we can, of course, drill further into that and say, let's look at it and explore the data in some interesting ways. And here's my opportunity management forecast. This is a way that I shared with this customer, a way that they could say, let's explore the data that's in there and give me some of the tools that Power BI uses, some of those tools that help me enabled me to understand that data better. Of course, I've got my KPI numbers. They're very simple. I can, filter to a particular fiscal period, but then I can go through my visuals and say, I want to filter to just a particular product and understand what's going on inside that product. Of course, I could filter to what phase are they in the pipeline. But in this case, I wanted to explore how do we look at individuals' pipeline and make forecasting adjustments to that. And in a real simple way, saying, okay, well, here's Veronica Quick, right? One of our demo assets. And we know that Veronica has already won almost $9 million in revenue for the quarter. So that's closed. So we're going to forecast her quarter, but we don't need to forecast what she's already closed. That's done. That's in the bank. But we know that she has open almost $6 million in open revenue in the quarter. And she has a target of $12 million. Now, right now, she's great. She's got more than enough open opportunities to close the quarter and meet and exceed her target, which is great. But we also know the reality is, as you get down closer to the end of the quarter, stuff happens, and sometimes opportunities that you forecast for the quarter don't close in that quarter. And that's where we can use the adjustment. And this is a tool within Power BI that allows us to do what they call what if, right? And it allows us to adjust that. And if I make an adjustment and say, let's say that Veronica is going to close 60% of the opportunities that are open in our pipeline. And she's going to close, obviously, the ones that are closed, 100% of those stay there. But if I drop it to 40%, if you'll notice the light blue area combined with it where it fits along that against the yellow target, I'll change it to that. And now she just has just barely enough at 60%. She'll still hit her quarter, but she barely has enough. That's enough gas in the tank to get there. But some of her colleagues, like for instance, Diane or Amy, they don't have enough gas in the tank to close out the quarter with a win if they close at only 60% of what's in that remaining pipeline. Again, it's that interactive view of the data that's there that we don't see inside of Dynamics, because Dynamics gives you reports on where the data is right now and how it looks, what's exactly there. Now we have this ability to start forecasting and playing with the data a little bit, interacting with it, so we can make better decisions on it. So that was one of the cool things we got to play with.
Scott, it's awesome, right? So looking at the data, looking backwards in order to project where you're heading from an outcome perspective, whether it's forecasting or customer retention, and understanding those signals. What we're looking at here is really a canvas for the Power BI business analyst or the business executive to consume. Here is that story, but the slicers, the filters, all of that can be tailored in a drag and drop editor that's really easy, right? There's templates that you can take advantage of, but it's also, as a canvas, you can create these elegant visualizations and take advantage of tools to tell that story for your organization. So that if you want to summarize, here are some key performance indicators, or if you want to hide or show different slicers, everything that you've gracefully shown can be created by a business analyst, very similar to the drag and drop nature of Excel or PowerPoint. In this case, just rich visualizations in Power BI.
That's exactly right. Let me show you a different example, and this was looking at it. Actually, let me switch over to the other dashboard, which is my customer service dashboard, and talk about how we explored that information. So if I'm looking at customer service, I'm thinking about cases. Now, as we look at the data that's coming out of Dynamics, obviously KPIs are a big part of that. Key performance indicators are those flags that tell our business decision makers, are things going well, or what things need attention overall. In this case, I can see very high level KPIs like the case counts or the minutes to resolution. And those are, of course, data that's coming out of Dynamics and made available to the decision maker so they can understand how quickly are we getting to our customer. There's other ones like the number of cases, activities per case, how long total does it take to get to a case resolution, the percentage of escalations. But I've also got this interesting one called sentiment. How happy are our customers with our service and we're providing? And that sentiment score is one we want to improve to say, are we doing better at our data? Are we better at our service? And what is it that actually drives great customer service and not great customer service? Can we explore into that? So let me go into, I've got a visual here called key influencers. And when I open that up, I can see real quickly on the left, I've got just a list of the owners. It's just a slicer that's available saying who are the people who have closed cases. And up at the top, you'll notice I've got a filter saying I'm just looking at the last 6 months worth of data. But in the middle, I have this key influencers visualization that's focused on customer sentiment score. And I'm asking the question, what influences the sentiment to be positive overall? This is a really cool visualization built into Power BI that brings forward a lot of AI that's sitting, it's AI that's working on top of the dynamics data to understand what are the regressions, what are the pieces that say this is the factor that leads to positive sentiment. Well, in this sample data, I've got just a simple thing saying if the influence comes in, if the case comes in through email, then we are 5.5 times more, or 5.72 times more likely to get a positive score out of that, which is great. We see other venues don't have quite as positive score, but because we've implemented some email to case processes within Dynamics, we're resulting in a very positive experience for our customers. So we have some learning there that we're doing. We also know that when the subject is maintenance, we have about 1.5 times more likely to result in a positive score, which tells us that there is some, there's some value. Whatever we're doing to solve maintenance cases is working for us. Now, just as a side note, if you ever have questions about this, if you'll notice over here, I've got the other subjects that are available: delivery, analytics, information, products. And you'll notice that sentiment, the maintenance, is not the doesn't have the highest percentage. It's only second high. But this is actually part of this is part of the intelligence that's baked into this product. Is it's looking at it and says, oh, for maintenance, you have 195 examples of that, of which 20% are positive. But if I go one to the left to the one that has the higher percentage with 28.1, I have only 119 examples of it, meaning that statistically I have better confidence that maintenance, I have enough knowledge to know that it's the most important factor. So it's weighting those based on how many examples it has, as well as the percentage. So that's all part of that AI that's baked into it. But I can take this same information and start filtering it to, like, let's have an example. Let's take an example of, I'm going to have a coaching session with David So here, and David has 242 cases. And if I filter to just David, I see that, sure enough, same thing is true there. With the origin is email, 5x times more likely to result in positive. But in this case, I find out that if the product, the first time we looked at it was subject, was maintenance. Now we're looking, and for David, when David is dealing with custody services in a financial services organization, if he's dealing with custody, he's 3x times more likely to result in a positive score. That means that David's probably doing something or handling these cases in a really strong way, which is great because we want to learn from what David's doing and apply that across the organization. But I can also, of course, if I need to have a coaching session with David, change it to negative and say, what is it influencing that if David has a negative experience with a customer, or a customer has a negative experience, what influences that result? And I find out if the case subject overall is just products, David doesn't have a great track record dealing with those customer cases. Winds up with a lot of negative cases like that. I could look at maybe another individual, Julian on the team, and analyze Julian's sentiment. And I find out for Julian's result is, if the origin is phone, he has a negative sentiment score. And if the subject is trade break. So again, it's not to beat up on these individuals. It's just to find ways in which we can pull forward that information out of the data we have, so we can make good business decisions on it. And
yeah,
again,
Scott, I think it's key because it's giving you the insights, not just the data, right? It's looking at how can we help the employee be more empowered to drive the outcome for the organization based upon data, and what are the things that David So is doing, or how can we train Julian Isla around, here is the fortification of the outcomes that you want to help give to your customers. This could be sales, this could be customer service, this could be fulfillment in warehouses, utilization of assets. Again, it's that storytelling through real rich data in this canvas that helps you to drive the business, and it's extremely powerful.
That's exactly right. Let me show you the same information, or with a slightly different data set inside of Power BI, and how I built that very quickly. So this is an example of the same type of thing. Let me customer satisfaction. If I look at customer satisfaction, and a slightly different data set, and in this case, I've built it with but it's all coming off of Dynamics, of course. And I've built it so that I could do the same type of interaction with an individual and say, what are the key influences for that individual? Or if I wanted to say maybe for a product, what results in great experience for our custody services users, as opposed to maybe our treasury services users or our asset users. Sometimes if there's not enough data to be statistically significant, it will give you that little window saying it's not enough there. But in the other cases, we have this visibility into for all products and all customers and everything. If the customer comes in and it's outbound customer service is the industry for the account, they've got a great, positive score. But the other part of that is actually this interesting way of saying, let's combine factors together and explore that and say for our top segments, we find out that we've got a segment that has 284 records in it. 95% of those are positive outcomes. So if we look at that, we say, well, if the outcome is outbound, if the industry associated with the account for the opportunity is outbound customer service, we have this really great track record for those. If I look at another one, it's if industry is business services, or if the industry is not outbound and it's not business services and the owner is David, it's just a way of slicing and dicing the data in different ways to say, tell me what are we doing right? Where do we need to improve our customer service? That's just looking at that outcome of customer service. But you remember we also had another outcome, which is escalation, and what drives cases to go from level 1 not being resolved to level 1, but getting driven up to level 2. Again, I'm just pulling this data out of Dynamics, and I can say, you know what, overall, if our cases are coming in as a maintenance case, that's 9 times more likely to get escalated to level 2. But that, for a business decision maker, could look at that and say, aha, maybe I need to either automatically escalate cases that are maintenance to level 2 directly so that we can get a resolution faster, or can we bring some of that maintenance tooling or maintenance insight down to level 1 so that they can solve it on the first try and solve it faster and ultimately drive that customer satisfaction? It's just, the possibilities are kind of infinite in terms of how many different opportunities we have to be able to explore the data that's sitting inside of Dynamics through Power BI, through these visuals and the AI that's built into them, so we can drive better decisions for our business decision makers. So we looked at the customer sentiment, but recently in a customer, I was talking with them about sales, a large customer. Let me switch over to my sales environment here, and I'll show you a dashboard that's built in for sales. Again, we saw this inside of Dynamics already, but I use the same influence analytics to help talk to a sales team leader to help them understand what's driving the success of their opportunities. And we found things like, okay, well, if it's the customer is a platinum customer, let me highlight that one. Well, we have a 1.73 times more likely to win that opportunity. But what we also did was we said we can pull together the data that's in Dynamics and data that's external to Dynamics. And for instance, in this case, their annual spend, their annual revenue for this customer, said we found out that if it's a lower annual spend, they have a higher likelihood of winning incrementally more opportunities, quantitatively more opportunities. And so it was really an interesting process to explore that. And as I was exploring it, I said, let's open this up and show you if I wanted to add another feature to that and say, maybe I wanted to explore the, we've already looked at some of the, like for the city, state, maybe I want to look at the owner of the account as being a feature. All I have to do is click on owner, that drops it in, and suddenly it recalculates, and I find out that Carlos, when Carlos is the owner, that's a significant factor whether or not the opportunity wins. If he's the owner of the account that the opportunity is associated with, maybe he's just building a better relationship with those accounts. Again, it's drilling and being interactive with the data and understanding them. But all this on the right-hand side, you're seeing the data that's brought in. If I open up the queries here, I'll click and I'm just working inside the Power BI desktop to construct it. And the next step would be to take that same Power BI dashboard and export it to Dynamics so that we could see it there. But in this case, if you'll notice, I'm pointing to my demo environment here, and I'm running queries that pull back the list of accounts, opportunities, the sales team, the goals, fiscal periods, etc. Bring that in, and I could easily just say I need to add a new source of data and point it to either Excel or to one of the 260 something connectors we have. We can point to all kinds of different sources, whether it be SQL tables or HANA, SAP HANA data. Bringing that together, that's one of the real strengths of this tool, especially when it comes to a Dynamics implementation. In the old days, we used to have the limitation of if you wanted to show this data in a Dynamics dashboard, that data had to live inside of Dynamics. One of our major competitors has the same thing. If you want to analyze data through their tool set, that data has to live inside of their data schema. With this tool, we're agnostic to that. If we want to bring in data from Dynamics and mash it up against data from a legacy, a back-end system, an accounting system. In one case, I brought in data for a car dealership. I brought in data from Dynamics and mashed the sales opportunities against weather data for the locations of those individual dealerships, pulling it off the National Weather Service, and said, okay, for sunny days, this dealership closes at X percentage, and for rainy days, this dealership closes at a lower but same percent, better percentage. And we were able to look at how that influenced whether their marketing efforts, because they were just looking at how well their marketing efforts translated into sales, but they didn't have that extra factor of the weather on top of it. And when we start combining that together, we get incredible insights into what's going on. And again, as professionals in this organization, it's incumbent for us to look and see how can we help answer the question the customer's trying to solve. And ultimately, we've got this incredible toolkit that lets us drive to those answers. And I'm incredibly excited about being able to talk about it and to share with it. And if anybody's got questions, love to be a part of your conversation.
Yeah, Scott, it's excellent. So looking at the capabilities of, we're agnostic. We want to aggregate that intelligence and the insights from multiple internal and external data sources. Microsoft realizes that your organization has investments in other platforms for your data estate. But if you're taking advantage of Microsoft's Power BI and our business analytics capabilities, for 11 years, Gartner has Microsoft as #1 within business analytics. And it's because of the capabilities of Power BI and the ability to reach out to those disparate data silos and bring them into an elegant canvas like this and report those insights back into Dynamics 365 or the Power Platform, or the ability to take advantage of that within Microsoft's AI layer and bring in that capability. So you're harnessing multiple different data sources into an intelligent canvas and then presenting that story back to users through Microsoft's applications. It's integrated, and it's the value of being able to take advantage of all of that analytics capability to automate, act, and ultimately analyze, here's what's happening within your business. Scott, thank you very much for showcasing this marriage of analytics horsepower. Again, it's why Microsoft's #1 in the space. It's there's a lot that's going on from business and analytics, and we appreciate you helping to share our story. So thank you very much, Scott.
Great to be with you.